proof that from the river to the sea is genocidal?
Palestine.
Oh my God. Okay, here.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That is a genocidal slogan, okay? Because the river that they're talking about right here is the Jordan River. To the sea, Mediterranean Sea, I'll edit in post. Palestine will be free. What's in the middle here? Israel? No longer. Now it's Palestine. What happened to Israel? They pushed it into the sea. It's code. It's
okay. The problem with Matt doing this is that, like, the problem with what Matt's doing here is that I know him. He's joking. He's being sarcastic. Problem is, it's a little too close to the fucking actual unironic counter.
It's code for doing a genocide. Whatever.
Which is pretty cool because, yeah, you said they're going to believe it and Anderson Cooper is going to call him out tonight. No, it's awesome because they're going to, like, accidentally, Matt is going to get, like, an APAC sponsorship, and then, like, Anderson Cooper is going to call him to be like, thank you for being a brave voice. It says here in your bio that, like, you're a writer, but also you're, like, a bit of a leftist, and it feels like you really get it. You really get the dangers that these scary Palestinian protesters are pushing for. So I think you should come on. Like, you're gonna have him on. They're gonna have him on CNN to just, like, talk about this.
Whatever's in the middle here, whatever country in the middle between river and sea that will be free is saying they will be free of the other. Whoever's free is just doing a genocide. That's how it is. And I can prove it because right now, from the river to the sea, Israel's free currently. And they're doing a genocide. So, I mean, it's kind of flawless logic. From the river to...
I mean, then, dude, okay, at this point, he's just saying, at this point, he is literally just saying what the argument is. You know how weak your argument is when you're pushing semantics? Brother, there's never been a moment where it wasn't semantics. Okay? They already had him on. Okay, we're done. Shut the fuck up, chatter. That's American political commentator, journalist, hero, Adam Friedland, okay? How dare you? You don't understand. A moment's coming, especially at the top of the hour. I'm not going to run an ad break right now. Chat is fucking 12:57, but, like, I'm going to do a 1 minute here. I'm not going to do a 3-minute ad break because, like, I just started, you know? It's been 31 minutes, dog. We're not going to fucking run a goddamn ad break at this time. That'd be crazy. Okay, so where the fuck was I? And what the fuck was I going to talk about? There is, I want to ask you guys, like, are there things that you've seen that are very frustrating to you that you would want me to address? Because I feel like, I feel like there was some stuff. I feel like there were some videos that you guys wanted me to watch. You want us to make you mad on purpose? Yeah, I just saw APAC post Bernie, and honestly, I don't even want to talk about it, but I guess we have to, because goddamn, very sad stuff. Very sad. I don't know what's happening.
I want to just clarify one thing, Senator, if I might. You support a humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire, which would require an agreement on both sides to halt the fighting. Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated.
Even he's hitting the ha. God damn.
To turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region.
Even he hit the fucking KH, dude. What's happening?
Understand that Hamas has got to go. So
I want to just clarify.
So many people say this, but it's like, brothers and sisters, have you not seen the past, like, at least the past 2 decades, okay? It's almost been 20 fucking years. It's going to be 20 years since Israel pulled out of Gaza, okay? Stopped occupying it. And they kept on doing this. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. Where they're just like, we got to deal with Hamas. We got to deal with Hamas. And it's like, isn't it Hamas? Why'd they say Hamas? I don't know. But anyway, the point is this. Okay? Does it mean that in the past operations that they engaged in, that they conducted in the fucking Gaza Strip, like they weren't trying to fucking eradicate Hamas? Were they lying back then? Because they said it that time too. They said it, as a matter of fact, every single time. They never just like go into Gaza and blow up Gaza to be like, we just want to kill civilians, actually. Of course they're not going to say that. Nobody would say that. Except this time around, they kind of are saying that. Like low key, but not even low key. Pretty high key saying that, as a matter of fact. So, like, how you're not stupid. You're a smart guy. You're a very, very smart guy, right? This is, not only are you a smart guy, you're Mr. Smarty guy. You're Mr. Smarty Pants, who has said he wants to deny Israel munitions and aid unless they fucking stop the occupation. So what's happening? Like, it just blows my mind. He's literally, like, historically been the guy. He's been the guy. They yelled at him. They said Bernie was anti-Semitic. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Bro, his ideological counterparts in Israel are complaining about how fucking ridiculous Bernie's been. Like, you're never running again. You're 98,000 years old. You are so much older than Israel. Why are you, like, you were there when Israel wasn't real and it was like Judea, okay? The fuck do you mean, bro? What are you doing? Motherfucker avoided the Romans and shit, and he's over here talking about like, oh, well, Hamas, we need to destroy Hamas. Like, I don't understand. It, like, physically makes no sense to me. Especially because what sits in my mind permanently is what Dr. Ofer Kasif said on this broadcast, where he literally tried to reach Bernie Sanders, okay? This man is an Israeli Knesset member who was suspended, okay? He's older than Israel. Bitch, many people are older than Israel. Israel is 75 years old, okay? There are a lot of people who are older than Israel. Joe Biden is older than Israel, of course. Half of Congress is older than Israel, dog. What the fuck do you mean? My point is, Bernard Sanders was not like, Sanders a liberal Zionist, but I don't really understand it because, like, I don't think he's ever been like a we need a one-state solution or anything like that. Like, I'm not expecting him to say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free or whatever. Did anyone see a statement of the Hamas leader saying he wanted to end the state of Israel? Is there a link to that? Yes, dude. Hamas wants to end the state of Israel. Okay, yes. It doesn't matter what they want, okay? For every fucking dumbass, like, in Lebanon, Hamas leader that comes out and is like, we want to do genocide to the Jews or whatever, there is 1,000 current sitting Israeli Knesset members who are like, we want to nuke Gaza, actually. Even if it kills us, we want to nuke Gaza. That's how much we want to fucking kill Palestinians. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The idea that, like, these guys constitute I was just asking to see it. I'm saying it wasn't a justification for Israel. Anyway. Oh, yeah. The oppressed versus the oppressed, the dichotomy. Yeah, I mean, I've seen this too. Yeah, I saw all of her other posts. It was crazy. She said war days from Tel Aviv, and this is what it looks like in Gaza City. You know what I mean? The point is, Hamas is a fucking mostly powerless entity. And also, their actions are a reaction. Bro, she was spamming that OnlyFans account. Nice, dude. I mean, good for her. Listen, sex work is real work. I respect it. You know, she's on that grind. It's kind of gross to do it, though, off of, you know, ethnic cleansing happening. Hamas is not an existential threat to Israel. They have about 20,000, 25,000 members. Israel's a population of 9.3 million people. Hezbollah has 100,000 fighters. No, The point is, Hamas and the ideological predisposition that people attribute to Hamas, which certainly is real for many of its members, okay, that is a vengeful ideology that wants to like kill or do as much damage as possible to anyone living in Israel proper, is not one that is consistent across the board for all Palestinians. And Palestinians have, both by way of voting and also by way of polling, have shown that reality time and time again. And it's, by the way, completely understandable if almost all of the Palestinians were straight up like, oh yeah, we want to fucking do everything we can to violently break away from our chains, because they are being currently violently apprehended by a heavily militarized nuclear superpower that the United States of America is treating like a military base. It's completely ridiculous to not recognize that situation. Ultimately, though, that violence comes from the oppressor. The oppressor sets the standard of the violence. Superpower Israel doesn't have that high of a GDP. Man, what the fuck do you mean? It doesn't matter. First of all, Israel's a very wealthy country in general in comparison to its fucking counterparts. Maybe not like an oil-rich nation, obviously, but it has a fucking nuke, and it gets, at the very least, $3 billion a year from the United States of America. What the fuck do you want? This is a ridiculous fucking take. Like, Israel is small, bean Andy is like one that I only hear from the likes of Ben Shapiro. It's got a nuke, dog. Fuck you mean? Also, here's the thing. I'm not fucking saying that like that like the 9 million people living in Israel proper, 3/4 of them being Jewish by the Israeli designation, okay? Many of them are still Arab Jews. Like, that those guys have to leave. Like, I'm not saying that at all. That's one, in my opinion at this point, immoral, and two, it would be impossible. That's why I advocate for a one-state solution. And this is the position of many emancipatory movements within the Palestinian, amongst the Palestinians in perpetuity. No matter how hard people try to like say, no, you don't understand. They want to violently and aggressively wipe out all Jewish people. Like, that's their goal. Their goal is to just do like anti-Semitism. Like, that's what it is. It's stupid. And many scholars do not agree on this anyway, but the unfortunate reality is that they do not get any kind of fucking takes, any kind of like time. You will never hear from Norm Finkelstein on CNN. You will never hear from Ilan Pappé on CNN. You are, and these are again Jewish scholars. These are Israeli scholars. For Ilan Pappé, he's Israeli. There are anti-Zionist Israeli scholars out there, historians that have written about it. The new historians in general are very good on this. Okay. And of course, an intellectually curious mind would go, hold up, let me get a better understanding of what's going on, because a lot of these people that study war crimes consider Israel to be an apartheid state. Let's take a look. I wonder if there are people who are out there who have been writing about this kind of thing for a very long time. But no, of course not. We're not intellectually curious, because the goal of the media is not to be intellectually curious. The goal of the media is to cover the fucking asses of America's most important asset, Israel. Holy moly. Yes, Rashid Khalid is good as well.
Yeah. Why does not one country...
Why don't you ever refer to Palestinian scholars? It almost reinforces the idea that it's only reliable if it's an Israeli who says it. One, my name is Hassan. I don't know if you know this. So as a fellow named Hassan, when I'm talking to a larger American audience, I'm already coming at it from the back foot. Okay? There are certain things I can say and certain things that immediately will be weaponized against me. Two, Israeli scholars on the matter are some of the best scholars on the matter. This does not mean that there aren't Palestinians or other Muslim scholars, as a matter of fact, that have covered this issue great as well. The problem is, as a boy named Hassan, relying, I still have to tailor my commentary to the expectations of a Western audience. And having said that, I mention Edward Said quite frequently. Okay, he is the GOAT on this. Obviously, Orientalism, like, this is his life's work. So there's that. He is the Palestinian author. And I had Zachary Foster on not that long ago. So it's just, you're ridiculous. You're ridiculous for trying to fucking make this assertion, like trying to tie it to something. And you're only saying that because you read it on Twitter. That's the reason why. You read someone on Twitter pop off about that. And then, and that's the reason why you brought it in here without even like checking. Yeah, you guys heard Austin in the background? Yeah. Oh shit. Murat! Oh, door's open. Oh no, I was yelling at Murat. His food is here. Touchdown Vikings. Hell yeah. Okay. Anyway, so let's continue. This is like the only fucking outlet that will ever have Norm on is Russia Today.
The entire Arab world not want to help their brothers and take them in, spread them out. You don't want them in Egypt. You don't want them in Jordan. You don't want them in Syria. You don't want them in Saudi Arabia. There's a million countries. Spread them out. Nobody wants to help them.
That's so gross, dude. Like, what do you mean? We just personally took Israel out of the equation in its entirety at this point. First of all, this is not true. There are 6 million Palestinians. There are 6 million Palestinians that have permanent refugee status living in the immediate region. Okay, the notion that like none of these other regional actors give a shit about Palestinians is a silly one. They have permanent refugee status. Okay, and here's one country that they were expelled from, Israel. It's not a fucking it's not a natural disaster. It's not a hurricane. It's not a volcano. It's a fucking whole ass country. The only democracy in the Middle East, as a matter of fact, if you listen to like all of these fucking dumb bitches that have been pumping this strategy on the off season over and over again. That's why it's so permanent. It's so impossible to shake Americans out of this like idiotic notion that you cannot be a fucking democracy if you are an apartheid state. Okay, there is no democracy when you're in apartheid. It's like looking at South Africa and be like, it's the only democracy in Africa. Okay, dude, yeah, it's a democracy for white people, or was a democracy for white people. Just like Israel is a democracy, and even then, it's like teetering on the edge of not being a full-blown democracy for Jews in Israel. That's it. It's fucking ridiculous. Spread them out. Look how callously we talk about doing ethnic cleansing and ethnic displacement. Like, fuck, man. Animals. These fucking donkeys, these baboons who wear these suits to make it seem like they are, they have the moral high ground. Okay? They do not.
Why?
This is a difficult. I'll tell you what. Let's pause for a moment. Thank you.
I'll answer in one simple sentence.
Make your point. But we're
Why
going
did any of the European countries or the United States want Jews before the Nazi Holocaust? Maybe the Jews were like the Palestinians. They were so horrible. They were so vicious. They were so bestial, or as the current Israeli government calls them, human animals. Maybe that's why none of the European countries and the United States didn't want them. Do you think that's the reason?
This is not easy. But we're going to have.
Oh my God, look at his face. Look at his face. He just got fucking absolutely eviscerated. He's got nothing.
I'm curious.
Gentlemen,
you think that's the reason you're smiling, but your stupid smirk won't change the fact that the very argument you used was
Don't like
used
me,
by
do you,
Hitler.
sir?
Yeah, the same
Joe, could it be
argument
because
you
I'm a
used
Jew?
was used
Could
by
it be because
Hitler
I'm a
to
Jew?
justify.
Bro, you're talking to also a Jewish person, okay? Like, what do you mean? Oh, because I'm a Jew? It's like, hey, dumbass. Norm is Jewish too, you fucking dumbass. Shut the fuck up. This is, listen. This is also part of the reason why I rely on a variety of different literature, but also certainly anti-Zionist Jews as well. Like, I make that argument with the name Hassan. Is over. It's Jover. Nobody even understands that I'm like the comparison that I'm making. Nobody understands that the comparison I'm making is like the dehumanization is what you were doing to Arabs. Okay? Everybody goes, oh, dude, you're a Nazi. Fuck off. Move on. That's the difference.
And you don't like Jews, do you?
Gentlemen.
Your argument was used by Hitler to justify the extermination of the Jews. Nobody.
What's my argument? What's my argument?
Nobody
What's my
wants
argument?
them because they're so terrible and so horrible. You're a Nazi speaking now in those kinds of arguments.
This has become very contentious. We're going to take a break. I want to thank you both.
Not on my part.
Doctor, I want to thank.
Yeah, you got fucking Cumster, dog. Holy shit. Oh my God. Why is Twitch hiding you from my followers queue is a question people ask me all the fucking time. I don't know why, and it usually isn't even a real issue, and it's just like a you-specific thing.
Thank Dr. Norman Finkelstein, as well as Steve.
He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. Shut the fuck up, bitch. You just got absolutely destroyed. You got destroyed. You got destroyed.
Malzberg for this very passionate and, as you can see, very.
Oh my God, he got fucking absolutely doo-dooed on. He just fucking dookied on him. Because it is true. It's true. Have you watched Shapiro versus Oxford students vid? There's a lot more discussion on the conflict than in Cambridge. Wait, oh, is the one I watched the Cambridge vid? Is that what it was? This one was the Cambridge? Oh, it's not even the Oxford vid. Okay, give me the Oxford vid. I'll watch that one. It'll probably make me mauled. Big myth about the founding of Israel.
I want to break down the biggest myth about Israel, which...
Let me guess. Big myth about the founding of Israel is that Zionism wasn't entirely too popular because obviously the Orthodox Jews, like the actually super religious Jews, were like, the fuck do you mean? The Torah says we don't have a nation until the Messiah comes back. You're being anti-Jewish for Zionism. And then he's going to say that... And then he's going to say that there were reformists that wanted to just like stay in England and in other places in Europe, which is, again, it's an 8-minute video that I pre-watched because guess what? What he's describing is like historic facts that I have read as well. And most importantly is from is perfectly demonstrated in Ilan Pappé's work. Specifically, 10 Myths is the one that he is referencing. That's where it comes from. Like, that's where, I mean, that's not where it comes from, but like he perfectly describes all of this stuff. Okay, Ben Shabibo went to England, which is, of course, literally the most like ultra-Zionist country on the planet. Ben Blipstein. Biden administration official says Israel's counterattack against Hamas has been too severe and too costly in civilian casualties, but they're unable to exert significant influence on America's closest ally in the Middle East to change its course. Yeah. I hate that pre-watch by reading one book. I mean, you can, if you're going to read one book, that's the book to read, in my opinion. Point is this, okay? I already told you, Ilan Pappé, 10 myths. 10 myths is the book. Everybody goes, what book? Source, the Bible. I've been dying for you to watch this video. Okay, sure, I'll watch this video. You confuse me with facts.
1945. World War II is finally over. Europe is filled with tens of millions of refugees. 2 years later, Great Britain lost control of Southeast Asia. India and Pakistan win independence, and 7 million Muslim refugees exchange places with 7 million Hindi refugees. Today,
I don't get it. What the fuck does that have to do with Israel? What's happening here? Fuck does this have to do?
not one of these people is a refugee. Not one. They have integrated into their host countries and built new lives. And then
motherfuckers like, hey, did you, I'll have you know, in 1919, there was also a border swap between Greece and Turkey, and they were not considered refugees no more. And it's like, yeah, okay, fine. Really gruesome process in general, but also, still, the fuck does this have to do with Israel? Like, I don't get it.
there are
It wasn't 1919, but it was around that time. I don't fucking remember exactly when it was. God damn it, it's my own goddamn personal history, and I don't know.
Palestinians. In 1947, the United Nations presented a partition plan.
This is Israel's Foreign Affairs Ministry. Okay. Israel's Foreign Affairs Ministry.
For the Jewish homeland. The Arabs gave a resounding no to that plan.
Yeah, I wonder why, dude. I wonder why. Because most of the people at this point, the Jewish population is 33% of the people living on that land. They are seen as like settler colonialists, which they are. They are engaging in a settler colonialist project. Okay? And who is doing the settler colonial project? The motherfucking British that claimed that they were going to give a national piece of land to the Palestinians for collaborating with them against the Ottoman Empire. So, yeah, of course they're going to be like, no, dog, we don't want this. You told us we could have our land. I thought that's what was going on. What do you mean? And in that 1947 partition plan, at the end of the day, the 33% population of newcomers who are Jewish end up getting 55% of the population. No, it was like 94% Arabs and 6% Jews, man. It's not 33%. No, dog, you're wrong. Okay, you're wrong. In 1947, it was 33% of the population. It was. What you're talking about is 6% Jews before British Mandate Palestine, before Jewish immigration occurred. What you're talking about is when Jews were declared Palestinian and lived alongside Christians and Muslims under the Ottoman Empire. Okay? So here's what happens. Unless you're doing this semantics thing where you're talking about like 94% Arabs and 6% Jews is like Ashkenazi Jews are like those are the only ones who are Jewish, and then the rest of the Jewish Arabs are actually still Arab, which is true. They technically are, but not if you ask the ethno-state. The ethno-state does not declare Arab Jews to be Arab. That's a specific designation for Muslims and Christians who happen to be Arab. Jewish Arabs are not considered Arab. They're considered Jews. Why is this like weird, incredibly racist designation the norm? I don't know. Maybe because Zionism is an incredibly racist project because it's a settler colonial project. Of course, it's going to have a little bit of fucking racism baked into it. Anyway.
They rejected a state for themselves if it meant also giving a state to the Jews. 6 Arab states attacked the fledgling Jewish
yeah, just out of fucking nowhere, this
state,
is what happened.
Which was small but plucky and determined to survive. In the meantime, many of the Arab inhabitants left their homes because of the war and the promise by Arab leaders that the Jews would be defeated quickly. They plan to return when...
Okay, so there is some level of truth to this, okay? There is some level of truth to this. There is some level of truth to this. Some people did think, or actually most people did think that they were going to get back their homes, okay? That part is true. It's just a very gross way to cover the story by refusing to recognize that most of these most of these like Arab villages had at this point, by this point, had created their own, like either they had like a barely a fucking standing, not even a militia, but just like some arms, small arms, because they had been disarmed by the British occupying force at the time. Okay. As opposed to the standing military that the Zionists had, Haganah with like more than 100,000. Okay. So of course it's not true. The only part of it that is true is the part of it that the part where there were definitely people that thought that they were going to come back to their houses once they left.
When they won the war and the Jews had been thrown into the sea.
I like the idea that they won the war and the Jews were thrown into the sea.
To their great surprise, they lost. Several 100,000 Arabs had become...
They lost. Yeah, bullshit. Like that he started off with 1947 instead of talking about the Nakba, because, yes, technically, the expulsions predate the Nakba. The Nakba is just the most significant form of it, the most militarized form of it, because it accompanied like the British completely pulling out at that point. However, leading up to the Nakba, there was constant back and forth fighting amongst Arab villagers who did not have as many weapons or anything like that against a very well-trained standing army. Like these were not just like random people. Like in many instances, people try to act like you just had like Holocaust survivors like grab up arms and get killed, and it was a big war against all these Arab nations. It's like fucking bullshit. And also, the reason why this video refuses to even say the word Nakba is because they want to cover it as though like a war broke out. I make videos about history and facts, continues to lie. I mean, this is the Israeli government. Of course it's a lie. Anyway. Of course, it's like all of it is a lie. This is akin to like a Turkish government video talking about Armenian genocide being a lie, okay? It's the same shit. I think like me being Turkish, growing up in Turkey, learning about, in school, learning about Armenian genocide as being like objectively a lie is the way they cover it in school. This is the way that I've been taught. 100% gives me like a unique perspective on this that most people will not be able to understand. So I get it. Like it's almost identical the way that like the way that Israel talks about the Nakba, the way that Israel talks about the Nakba is identical to the way that Turkey talks about the Armenian genocide, except the difference is Israel's a much more important and valuable ally to the United States, so like they can get away with just straight up fucking lying about everything.
Refugees. Later on.
Wow, Hassan, are you denying the Armenian genocide? Sad? What? No, I'm not. The fuck's wrong with you? I just described that I just described to you that I grew up in a country that does deny it. And for me to understand it, okay, don't make a joke like that, because there's so many motherfuckers who literally will take that and go, oh, he did it. Let's cut it out. Let's cut this. Most viewers are American. They were a multitude of genocide denial. Yeah, but the difference is like it's impossible for Americans to come to terms with their own genocide denial. But because Turkey is a scary, bad Muslim, I think it's a better way to use their Orientalist perspective as a moment of clarity and education.
They would be called Palestinian refugees. On the other
it's disgusting.
hand, at about the same time, 850,000 Jews were forced out of their homes all over the Middle East. They had lived in the Arab world for thousands of years.
I like this fucking propaganda because like it literally, first of all, there's multiple waves of immigration that occur throughout this time frame. because of different Arab countries having their own post-colonial movements, which also engages in like Jewish violence and pushing them out of their countries to go to Israel. But it's funny that he's saying this because this video in and of itself, unironically, if you know anything about the Nakba, if you know anything about like the forcible expulsion of Palestinians from their homes, makes it seem like the only reason why Jews were expelled from their homes is because of a reaction to the Nakba, which is true. That part is true, obviously. But it predates, like Jewish immigration into Israel from Arab countries also predates the Nakba as well. So, in a weird way, it ends up muddying the waters in a way that like benefits someone who is trying to make a wrong argument, claiming that the only reason why Jews were expelled from Arab countries is specifically because of a reaction to Israel and its nation state being formed.
But when the Arabs were defeated and the state of Israel was established, it was too much for the Arab regimes, and they showed
a lot of it was immigration and not expulsion. Yes, a lot of it was immigration, but to say that it was like to say that it wasn't a consequence of like anti-Jewish violence, like it would be wrong. That I don't agree with. I mean, there was heightened tension even before the Nakba.
showed their Jews the door. Therefore, you could say that the Arabs and the Israelis exchanged populations.
Oh my God, this is so gross. The Arabs and the Israelis changed populations? You dumb fuck. God, these people are so fucking racist. Dude. This is so fucking stupid. One, the Palestinians, there is no one united Arab population, just like there is no one united Jewish population. Okay? This does two things. One, attribute the violence that other individual Arab nations in their own national movements, in their own nationalist movements to build a nation state for themselves, it attributes all of that violence to Palestinians. Okay, all Arabs are the same. They're one-track minded. They just hate Jews. Okay, so that's number one. And number two, like, it then makes it seem as though there was like this population transfer that occurred because all the Jews were also one-track minded as well, that they just like kind of swap places. Meanwhile, the Arabs that lived in those nations still live in those nations. The only people that got fucked over in this process are the Palestinians. It's ridiculous.
Much like in Europe after World War II, and much like the Hindus and Muslims.
That's gross. That's fucking gross. Yeah, dude. Yeah, like Moroccan Jews coming into Israel went through the same conditions as the Jews in the Holocaust. Good take. When you're so fucking horny, to try to like justify and also avoid talking about like the real genuine violence that you subjected people that lived there to, that you just end up doing a little bit of Holocaust revisionism. You know what I mean? It's not fucking fine, you know, just a little bit. Anyway, the second thing that this video does, which is what Israel as a government has done that really frustrates me, is the idea that Jews and Arabs are separate. You can't eat hummus and you can't eat falafel and act like that's your own thing while simultaneously being like Jews and Arabs are totally separate. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. You can't be running around talking about how you make fucking hummus and then be like Jews and Arabs are different. No, they're not. There are millions of Arab Jews, you fucking asshole. Fuck you. And fuck every Arab Jew that says that they're not fucking Arab, that there's something different. That is supremacist, okay? That is a supremacist ideal that was instilled upon a population that had to go through a rough integration process to Europeanize themselves a little bit. It's so dumb, dog. It's so fucking stupid. It's so ahistorical. Yeah, to ask an Arab Jew if they're Arab or not, and see how they fucking react to it. Maybe not in America, but in Israel, if you ask an Arab Jewish person in Israel if they're Arab, they fucking flip out. I mean, some Arab nations say they're not Arab, Lamau. I know that. I know. Lebanon. Sorry. That was just a weird cough that I have. I know. The terms Arab Jew and Mizrahi were phased out some time ago. I'm just saying, it's fucking, it's ridiculous. Also, I'm Turkish. I know constantly running away from like any kind of Arabic influence in your culture, okay? Trust me. One thing that fucking pisses Turks off more than anything else is that also being compared to Arabs, they get real fucking triggered by that. Jesus Christ. Nah, fuck that. I'm Lebanese and I consider myself Arab. Law. Yeah, probably because you're Muslim. Muslim Lebanese people consider themselves Arab I mean, this is a reductive take, but Muslim Lebanese people consider themselves to be Arab. Christian Lebanese people sometimes say that they're Phoenician. Anyway. We don't need to get into all of that, but this video is stupid as fuck.
Muslims in India and Pakistan, and leave things at that. But the Arabs aren't willing to leave things at that. If they had, the Arab states would have done what Israel did a long time ago with the Jews from Arab states.
Nah, Lebanese Christian here. The Phoenician guys are mostly mocked as far as I know. Yeah, like some Lebanese people in America say that as well.
Integrate the Palestinians into their society and provide them with citizenship. Wow, what a not revolutionary idea. So why weren't...
Yeah, this is so fucking stupid, okay? It's so dumb. Until 1967, all Arabs, like Palestinian citizens of Israel, that made up, 20% to 25% of the population, were under military rule, okay? And then, after 1967, those guys were still, they are still absolutely systematically disenfranchised in very legal ways because Israel is an ethno-state, okay? But it didn't even fucking matter because then you also have a much larger problem post-1967 where you have an occupation on both Gaza and also in the West Bank. Now you have a much larger Palestinian population that you're completely fucking dominating. Bullshit.
Weren't they given citizenship or any other rights? The Palestinians were deliberately kept as refugees so that they could be used as a weapon in the war against Israel.
Yeah, dude, Israel is always small bean, you know? They're always the small bean country. They're not a fucking violent ethno-state that has done a tremendous amount of ethnic displacement in the region as a settler colonial project. It's always just a small bean, and all these other guys, they're being kept as refugees to hurt Israel. You have to be a fucking schizophrenic psycho to just like literally believe this, okay? No, you did this, and you don't want to fucking deal with it. You did it, and you don't want to deal with it, and you don't have to deal with it because like nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit about Palestinians. Why? Because they have nothing. There's no natural resources that the Palestinians have historically had. They got fucking olive trees and fishing, okay? So no one gives a fuck about, like, defending their rights. It's just the truth. That's it. And if you want to look at Palestinian history from the American perspective, the only reason why anyone has ever given a shit about Palestinians is because of our allegiances with the Gulf states leading up to the 60s and 70s because the Gulf states had a lot of power from oil. So that's the only ever interest in like maybe looking at the Palestinian plight from the perspective of Palestinians was almost always from the perspective of the Gulf nation states that at the very least back then would fucking say, like, this is unacceptable. This is completely unacceptable. We're gonna do everything in our power to make the West hurt. Anyway. Yeah, the olive trees were set on fire in the West Bank. Hamas was hiding under them. I know. It's sickening, especially considering how long it takes for olive trees to actually produce olives. And these are 100-year-old fucking trees and shit that they're burning. It's the most disgusting, gross shit I've ever seen in my entire life. It is so violent. It is so awful. It is specifically done out of anger. It's for vengeance. Israel's incursion, Israel's siege on Gaza right now is an act of vengeance. It is not. It is an act of vengeance, and it is an act of ethnic cleansing and ethnic displacement. There is no real like ending Hamas purpose behind it. They know it. I know it. We all fucking know it. The American government knows it. That's why they keep like leaking to the press. Oh, Israel has no plan on the Gaza Strip. Maybe we should reconsider this. It seems like Israel has no plan on what to do with the Gaza Strip. Of course they don't have a fucking plan, because there is no plan. It's just violence. It's just like violently displacing as many people as possible, slowly but surely taking territory, additional territory. Meanwhile, the American government is like, wow, maybe use like smaller bombs. Please, you're making it really hard for us to defend you. That is unironically the perspective of the American government in this entire process, is to just simply stay behind and go, dog, please just fucking dial it back. You're making it so hard for us to defend you. Like, we want you to kill all the Palestinians. We do. We love that. Thank you. Please keep doing ethnic cleansing. That's actually pretty fire. We don't give a shit about Palestinians. We are America after all. And they're Arab. Why the fuck would we ever care? However, you can't keep doing it so publicly and so awfully, because the more you do it, the more people are going, hey, hold the fuck up. This is kind of gross, and this is ethnic cleansing. That's it. And yeah, there's nothing better. Oh my God, look at Ben Shapiro looking at, just fucking trying to execute this hijabi woman with his with his eyes over here. Here, there is no greater example that Israel is not indigenous to the fucking land. Like, people in Israel are not indigenous to the fucking land than, one, burning olive trees, and two, ruining the fucking water supply. Indigenous people don't do that, okay? It's fucking psychotic.
Decades after Israel's creation, and they're not in the West Bank. So, if you're going to be arguing about Hamas, how can we ignore that over 200 Palestinians have been killed, including over 40 children, making it the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank before October 7th? That does not even include the killings happening now, just in 2023. So what justification do you have for that if Israel intends to, quote unquote, go after Hamas, is killing many people, especially children, under the justification of Hamas? So what justification do you have of them targeting the West Bank, even if we were to buy anything you said, which honestly I'm questioning?
Have you considered the fact that I'm incredibly racist and assume that all Arabs love Hamas and they are Hamas, and therefore I'm going to make an argument to do pogroms in the West Bank because they're also Hamas? Get wrecked. And then all of my dumbass dick riders are going to fucking clap because they are perma-stuck, never getting pussy for the rest of their fucking lives because they're young Republicans, young Tories in the UK. So the only thing that keeps them going is just like the thrill of debate, because they are just fucking deeply unlikable humans.
Sure.
So the casualties that have been incurred in the West Bank are prior to October 7th largely. There have been many since October 7th because there have been many conflagrations between the IDF and the Palestinian Authority and Islamic Jihad members in the West Bank. There's significant violence over the course of the early part of this year. There's a breakaway group from the Palestinian Authority. It's called the Lions. The Lions were a small terrorist cell, the Lions Den. They were committing acts of terror in places ranging from Jerusalem to areas of the West Bank. And the IDF was going in and making operational decisions to kill many terrorists in these areas.
Yeah, he did it. He did exactly what I said. He did exactly what I said. He said literally, no, the IDF is killing terrorists in the West Bank. Yeah, the IDF, which, by the way, is currently, if we're looking at international law, what the IDF is doing in the West Bank is terror. What Palestinians do in the West Bank is self-defense and perfectly legal. You need to understand this. When Ben Shapiro talks about the West Bank and says the IDF has to occupy that area and they have to go and kill people, he is 100% in the wrong. Okay? That is, by legal definitions, by international law, an act of terror. This is an indefensible act of terror that every single person with a conscience, and even plenty of people in Israel who otherwise are currently championing the fucking death and destruction of Gaza, would agree to. So remember that. When Ben talks about the West Bank and says, well, the IDF is like cleaning up terror there, bullshit. The IDF is doing terror in this region that they are occupying illegally. Completely unacceptable. It is immoral and it is illegal. Not many get the Monty there, okay? Not many acts are both illegal and immoral at the same time. Usually there's a lot of acts that are moral but still technically not covered under the law, like legally permissible and yet still moral. For example, an act of violence against a slaver would be illegal and yet moral. Do you understand? Whereas in this circumstance, in the West Bank, any kind of action that Palestinians take towards the occupying force is both moral and legal. Okay? Like 100%. And you rarely ever get that. You rarely ever get a situation where you're in the pocket entirely. Okay? So, understand that. So, you know, everyone needs to recognize that Ben Shapiro is a fucking liar and a son of a bitch for making it seem like this, that these are like terrorists. It's like, no, they're not. They are the standing military of their own fucking land that you are unjustifiably occupying. Okay? The same goes for Lebanon. When Israel invaded and Israel was trying to fucking destroy Lebanon, every act of resistance against the IDF was legal. Was not only legal, but also moral. Same with Iraq. Same with Afghanistan. When America goes into another country and invades another country, resistance to that invasion, doesn't matter what our fucking fifis are about the matter, okay? Doesn't matter what mainstream media tells you, okay? It is perfectly legal and perfectly moral to resist against an occupying force, okay? I'm not saying the same thing about Israel proper. There is a distinction there, and that's an important one. Okay? Which is why when I hear so many people try to conflate my perspective on the matter, they always say, oh, it's not talking about settlers. Like he means like all Israelis are violently settling. It is not 1948. Okay? It's not. It's not 1948. It's not 1967. It's 2023. The morality is obvious, but legal under what? Under international law. Anyway.
There are many areas in the West Bank that have been particularly infiltrated by terrorism. That the city of Jenin would be probably the example of.
Like, that's ridiculous. He's talking about, like, the Jenin Brigade, right? Like, oh, the city of Jenin is actually infiltrated by terrorists. You don't get to make that distinction. You can't say that. Like, that's a ridiculous thing, dude. It's like, there is no difference. It's literally like Palestinians saying, technically, it's like Palestinians saying, technically, all of Israel proper is overtaken by a terrorist cell. It's called the IDF. You know what I mean? What's the point of international law if there's no mechanism to enforce it? I mean, it's just, I don't know. These guys are supposedly liberals in a rule-based international order, so that's why I keep bringing up the international law perspective. I mean, usually it's international law is just like written by the victors to bully those who are you know, not in the sphere of influence. It's pure hypocrisy ultimately. Yeah, international law is used to legitimize the current hegemony. Yeah, here it is. This is from 1975. Universal realization of the right to people's self-determination and of speedy granting independence to colonial countries and peoples for the effective guarantee and observance of human rights. I think this is where it's from. Here, decolonialization. I'll find it in a second. Settling is violent itself, but there are malicious settlers and settlers. Nonetheless, we all want innocents to live. Sadly, the other side can't even whisper the word ceasefire due to their racism and hatred. So, anyway, ultimately, Chatter sent me this this link. It's in Arabic, dude. Here, let me see if I can find it in English. Yeah. Reaffirms the inalienable right of all peoples under colonial and foreign domination and alien subjugation to self-determination, freedom, and independence in conformity with General Assembly Resolution 1514 and other relevant resolutions of the United Nations. 2, renews call to all states to recognize the right of self-determination and independence of all peoples subject to colonial and foreign domination and alien subjugation, and to offer them moral, material, and other forms of assistance in their struggle to exercise fully their inalienable right to self-determination and independence. 3, reaffirms the legitimacy of people's struggle for liberation from colonial and foreign domination and alien subjugation by all available means, including armed struggle. That's the key here. 4, demands full respect to the basic human rights of all individuals detained or imprisoned as a result of their struggle for self-determination and independence, and strict respect for Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, under which no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment, and their immediate release, which also is another thing that Israel violates regularly. Number 5, welcomes the recognition of governments of Portugal to the right of all peoples under its colonial administration of self-determination and independence. Number 6, urges the government of Portugal to continue to ensure the process of decolonialization. Okay, so do you not realize that all of Palestine is colonized? It's not just the West Bank. How can you say Israel proper is different? The whole country is a settler colony. Yes, it doesn't matter. There's 9 million people there. And also, your perspective on the matter is not even the fucking popular perspective on the matter. Your perspective on the matter is not even like a perspective that more popular groups have held since like 1967. Okay? So it is a ridiculous fucking argument to continue pushing, especially because it's unhelpful, and also it would require a tremendous amount of violence. It's the same as like America. Okay, the United States of America is a settler colony, and we are hundreds of years into our violent actions at this point. To turn around and say that, like, people that have been here for fucking 30 generations have to be violently removed from the land would be ridiculous. It would be, and I don't even think any fucking Native American land back movement revolves around this, okay? Which is always funny because people go, oh, dude, you just want to violently fucking kill everyone in New York and give it to the Native Americans. I don't think that indigenous people in America should murder Americans. I just think they should be in control of their land again. I agree with what you're saying. Okay? This is why I say a one-state solution in my opinion, is a less violent solution than a two-state solution, because a two-state solution requires the forcible expulsion of 400,000 settlers living in the West Bank right now in order to offer Palestinians a nation state with contiguity. Okay? This is, by the way, what would be legal. It would be the first step in the legal process of ridding the West Bank of an unjustifiable, immoral, and very violent occupation that has made Israel into an apartheid state since 1967. Okay? So if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to fucking violently have almost 500,000 Israelis, and then we have the Jerusalem problem as well, which, you know, that is another at least 200 to 300,000 people living there in East Jerusalem, occupied East Jerusalem. So even if you were to just look at only the West Bank, there is still 450,000 settlers living in the West Bank. Okay? They have been delicately partitioning Palestinian villages with the specific purpose of, like, you know, robbing them of their own land, which they have. It's like 75% of the entirety of West Bank is now occupied. 100% of the West Bank is occupied by the IDF, but 75% of the land is like directly now overtaken by Israeli forces or Israeli citizens. Settlers that live in the West Bank are in their everyday engaging in an act of terror, settler colonial terrorism. That is what they are doing. Okay? 100%. Now, what is to be done? They have partitioned all of the Palestinian territories in the West Bank to 3 areas, which even then they also occupy some of those areas as well. Here, I used to be a two-stater as well, for the record. I am no longer a two-state solutioner, okay? I'm a one-stater for this reason, because there is no way out of this. This is an idea that the PFLP also was aware of, and even the PLO was aware of from the jump, from like the 60s onwards. Many of the popular movements were in recognition of a one-state solution being the only way to go about it, a secular one-state. Time and time again, they openly also mentioned that despite the fact that they were interested in violent emancipation, given how violent the colonial occupation was, they openly stated that they would not forcibly expel Jews from the land. That the idea, for the most part, okay, is that much like in Algeria, if there was in the beginning, much like in Algeria, if there was a post-colonial movement that succeeded, the Jewish population that wanted to stay there could absolutely stay there, and yet many would just simply flee somewhere else, okay? Flee back to Europe, flee back to another country, and that inherently is definitely violent. I understand that. This is precisely the reason why, as tactics evolved and as the apartheid regime evolved and calcified and solidified itself as a permanent fixture in the Middle East, a systemic subjugating factor on Palestinian populations, that there was increased Jewish population in the area in Israel as the country's population grew to 9 million, 25% of which are still Palestinian citizens of Israel. The understanding shifted as well. I'm French Algerian Jew, Sephardi Haredim, and I also have lots of Muslim family, but we are anti-Zionist. Don't forget, a two-state solution is also impossible because remember what happened when Gaza settlers were forced out of Gaza? If the IDF did the same in the West Bank, it would become Algeria in 1960, i.e. a pseudo-civil mutiny of sorts where members of the IDF side with the settlers, etc. Yeah, there's also that aspect too. In 2005, the Israeli government forcibly pulled out all of the settlers from the Gaza Strip. Okay? They acted like this was an act of kindness when it was not. When they forcibly pulled out the settlers, they had 8,000 settlers that were living in the Gaza Strip. They forcibly pulled them out. Remember those like greenhouses that all Zionists love talking about, the greenhouses? They had greenhouses, and they like, you know, the Palestinian Arab dogs don't know how to deal with the greenhouses. You know who fucking destroyed those greenhouses? The motherfucking settlers did. They broke down the majority of the greenhouses. And the Israeli government that was supposed to fucking, teach them how to use the greenhouses didn't do that, didn't offer material support, and actually cut the water to those greenhouses that were coming in from Israel proper. Anyway, so that's besides the point. My point is, those 8,000 settlers were violently removed by the IDF from the settlements that they lived in. That was an act of violence. It was an act of understandable violence, but it was an act of violence nonetheless. Where did those settlers go? They didn't live in Israel proper. They fucking got shifted over to the West Bank. Yeah, they took them and they put them in West Bank. So, here. Yeah, this document here. This is from 1969, okay? You said Control F democratic solution for PLFP. Yeah, here. This is the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which was formed after, what was it, like 2 different groups merged. I think it was like the Revenge. Hold on, I don't want to fuck this up. I'm gonna give you the actual. The actual group. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine is the second largest faction and the main opposition force to Fatah within the PLO. Okay? The PFLP, which styles itself as a revolutionary socialist group, has been in decline since the 1980s following the collapse of the Soviet Union, which had been its chief benefactor. Its standing has been further challenged by the emergence of non-PLO groups such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad. The group was co-founded by George Habash, Naif Hawatmeh, Wadi Haddad, and Ahmad Jibril as an umbrella organization for Marxist-Leninist and Arab nationalist groups. It still exists, but it is like around 3% popularity at this point. Okay, when you say, no stop, Arab nationalism will never work, what you also fail to consider is that the original formation of Arab nationalism was supposed to be a post-colonial action. Many of these Arab nationalist groups that were inherently Marxist-Leninist were no different than Pan-African nationalist movements that were occurring against colonial violence and colonial occupation. So it was an anti-imperialist movement. It was not necessarily a nationalist movement that was born out of a nationalist movement that you would see here right now. This is a very important distinction that I make all the fucking time. I try to explain this to like Americans all the time. Nationalist movements, after you have already established a nation state, are inherently violent and oftentimes fascist. Nationalist movements, like the IRA, for example, are anti-colonial actions. They're anti-imperialist, anti-colonial movements. They are created. They are created to specifically engage in an act of emancipation. Anyway, the group was co-founded in 1967 by George Habash. I said the PLFP opposes serving in governments under the Palestinian Authority and has been critical of their policies, particularly regarding security coordination with Israel. Okay, which is very unpopular. The Palestinian Authority's security cooperation with Israel is seen as a gross stain, and why wouldn't they feel that way? Because the Palestinian Authority is basically a part of the security apparatus of Israel that dominates people's lives, engaging in an act of unjustifiable violence in the West Bank against Palestinians that live there in their own fucking homes, in their own ancestral homes that they've lived for hundreds of fucking years. It is widely seen as betrayal. The reason why that's important for many of you to understand is because every single time, every single step of the way, whenever Palestinians have cooperated with the Israeli government has used them as a weapon against Palestinians rather than offering them the reasonable conciliatory demands that they were making, like autonomy, a right to self-determination. The Israeli government has literally fucking utilized the conciliatory Palestinian groups that started off very popular, okay? 83%. That started off very popular, that put down their arms in an effort to in an effort to engage with the Israeli government as equal actors, even though they were never equal actors at all. These are the guys. These are the guys that that got fucked over deliberately by design. Okay, something to always consider when you're like, how did Hamas came to be? Is it because Muslims are violent barbarians who just like want to do anti-Jewish hate crimes in the name of Allah? Or is it because Israel very purposefully, as a part of its state policy, both openly and quietly, always wanted to deal with more militant factions that they could cast away as terror cells because they knew that its continuation required Western cooperation? Okay? And in order to, and how do you continue Western cooperation? Well, you take all of the fucking guys that are, you know, that deal with the American administration, that literally get funding from the CIA, like Arafat or others under Arafat in Fatah, and make sure that they are only seen as a part of the Israeli security apparatus so that people recognize that they're not getting anything done. Anyway. The democratic solution, rejection of the chauvinistic and reactionary Zionist colonial solutions, which are based on recognizing the state of Israel as one of the facts of the Middle East area, because these solutions, besides contradicting the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination in their land, consecrate the Zionist expansion entity in liaison with colonialism and are hostile to the Palestinian and Arab national movements and are all the progressive and socialist forces in the world. On. Doors open. Number 2, rejection of the chauvinistic solutions of some Palestinians and Arabs, which were put forward before and after June 1967 and are based on the slaughtering the Jews and throwing them into the sea. Like, the founding charter of significantly more popular movements openly fucking, or time and time again has reinforced this value, that it is not about throwing the Jews into the sea, knowing full well that that is how it will be represented regardless. No, it's not a guess. It's my food. It also rejects the reactionary solutions which are based on accepting the state of Israel within secure and recognized boundaries as exemplified in the November Security Council resolution. The aforementioned solutions are put forward at the expense of the right of the Palestinians to self-determination in their land, and because the solutions implanted in the Middle East area are a racist, capitalist, expansionist state dialectically in liaison with the world capitalism, which is hostile to Palestinian and Arab national liberation movements, and are all the progressive and socialist forces in the world. Number 3, the struggle for a popular democratic solution for the Palestinian and Israeli questions to be based on the liquidation of the Zionist entity exemplified in all government establishments, army, administration, police, and all the chauvinistic Zionist political and labor organizations. The establishment of a people's democratic Palestinian state in which the Arabs and the Israeli Jews will live without any discrimination whatsoever. The establishment of, I'm going to repeat that one more time for those of you who are dense and are unfamiliar. This is why the from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, being like being a concept that like isn't being a concept that just like means forcible expulsion and death and destruction to all Jews is not correct. The establishment of a people's democratic Palestinian state in which the Arabs and Israeli Jews will live without any discrimination whatsoever. A state which is against all forms of class and national subjugation and which gives both Arabs and Israeli Jews the right to develop their national culture. Okay? That's it. The Popular Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine calls on all the Israeli and Jewish elements and groupings who are hostile to Zionism and imperialism to support the above-mentioned solution and participate in the common Palestinian and people's armed struggle for the implementation of this democratic revolutionary solution. That's it. This is from the basic political documents of the Armed Palestinian Resistance Movement. And this chapter is specifically a democratic solution to the Palestine question. Basic political documents of the armed Palestinian Resistance Movement from 1969, the Palestine Liberation Organization Research Center. I believe the chapter that we read was the Popular Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine and not the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. But the movements at the time, notice how there is no Hamas here? Because it did not exist. Okay? Because Hamas was not a thing. Hamas was founded in 1973 as a fucking Islamic charity. Its founding charter in 1988 as a political entity, while they were incredibly unpopular. Yes, that's mine. Thank you. Happened in 1988. The notion that these fucking guys are in any way, shape, or form anything but an offshoot of Palestinian resistance that basically shows the destruction of Palestinian lives as a resistance movement to the increasing brutality of the occupying regime, the increasing brutality of the Israeli apartheid state. That is what created Hamas. Okay? And even Hamas itself, in 2017, in an effort to get international recognition, chose to update their charter. And they did. And their charter is now woke. But that doesn't really matter. Everybody always talks about the 1988 charter because it's impossible to have that conversation. And also, there are still, at its leadership at least, Islamist elements. That in and of itself is true. Doesn't matter if the pre-2017, post-2017 Hamas and the government entity that has to engage in civic duties is very different. You have to start pronouncing your own name with the Hassan. Yeah. Now let's read the Likud charter. I will not do that because I feel like if I read you the Likud charter, I would get banned, or rather, if I read you the Likud charter, I would get NetsDG hit by NetsDG, and this entire stream would be area locked in Germany because they would go, hey, that's fascist and illegal to read. Yes, I mean it. I have read the Likud charter. I'm going to tell you right now, it's everything that Zionists attribute to how violent Palestinians are. Pure projection. They did cut ties with the Muslim Brotherhood in 2017, but they never was accepted by the Muslim Brotherhood for the violent arm. Cutting ties was to gain Iranian support. What's your opinion on calling this a war between Israel and Palestine, and if anything between Israel and Hamas, but I'm unsure of what to call it? I call it ethnic cleansing because that's what I think it is. Menachem Begin was a full-blown terrorist in 1948. Yes. 100%. No, I don't want it. The reason they pronounce it Hamas is because the equivalent of the Arabic letter KH is Heth, which Israeli pronounces a voiceless uvular fricative, KH, although it is actually pronounced as a voiceless pharyngeal fricative, Ha. In Judeo-Arabic, like it is in Arabic, by the way, that's the letter Chaya Rachik's name starts with, so it's actually Chaya, not Tachaya. Yeah. God damn, dude. Linguistic perverts in the chat. PFLP also explicitly called for a one democratic state with equal, hold on. Here. What we read was a Popular Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is supposed to be, I think, like, it turned into a Maoist one, right? I mean, what it is now is very different than... Oh, God. It's too big of a fucking document. What page is it on, you said? 224. And Likud isn't even the most right-wing party and isn't real. Yeah. It's now the DFLP, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. They have very limited popularity in comparison to other movements still. Of course, there's going to be splits in any kind of Marxist-Leninist formation because no matter what the cause, the uniting cause is, and Palestinian emancipation is the uniting cause for Palestinians, there's still, of course, always going to be deviations and maybe sectarian infighting. Sometimes sectarian infighting that turns into violent sectarian infighting. It's great. The Palestinian Liberation Movement is not racist or hostile to the Jews. It does not aim at the Jewish people. Its aim is breaking the Israeli entity as a military, political, and economic entity based on aggression, expansion, and organic unity with the interests of imperialism in our homeland. It is against Zionism as a racist, aggressive movement, which is true, in alliance with imperialism, which has capitalized on the suffering of the Jewish people to serve its interests and those of imperialism in this rich part of the world, which is the gateway to the countries of Africa and Asia. The aim of the Palestinian Liberation Movement is the establishment of a national democratic state in Palestine, in which the Arabs and Jews can live as equal citizens with regards to the rights and duties, forming an integral part of the democratic progressive Arab national existence, which will live peacefully with all the progressive forces in the world. Israel has carefully portrayed our war against it as a racist war, aiming at the destruction of every Jewish national and throwing him into the sea. The aim behind this is the gathering together of all Jewish nationals and their mobilization for a war of life or death. A basic strategy in our war against Israel should aim at exposing such a falsification and addressing the exploited, misled Jewish masses and pointing out the contradiction between their interests in living peacefully. Do you understand when you see the infinitely more popular historic movements of Palestinian emancipation? Maybe you get a better understanding as to why Hamas was used as a counterbalance. Demonstrating Zionist arrogance once again, thinking, much like the Americans have time and time again, oh, we'll just push this button a little bit, we'll just help them out a little bit, and then maybe there will be divisions in the Palestinian emancipation movement, right? But the real divisions did not come from any kind of funding. The real division did not come from any kind of funding for Hamas or anything like that. The real division actually came in negotiations. This, in my opinion, is one of the most important parts of this story. This arrogance of thinking that the more Islamist, fundamentalist cutouts were going to never be taken seriously by the rest of the world, and we can always handle them violently, and no one will ever look at us and say, you guys are violent for dealing with these terrorists. That was wrong. That was wrong, especially because Israel thought that it could control this occupation. And that was also wrong. It was never going to be without cost. Now, there's a spiritual cost, in my opinion, because, as I always say, white supremacy also hurts white people, okay, without them realizing it. I mean, think about the popular idea that in the United States of America, why don't we have a lot of these social provisions that we normally would in our European counterparts? They enjoy, decent public transit, healthcare, all this kind of stuff. Why do we not have these social amenities? Well, because white supremacy is a very powerful force that completely makes it permissible to advocate against our betterment. Because, hey, guess what? Black people are going to take advantage of that shit too. This is how it has always been packaged and sold to people. The concept of welfare queens, the concept of a mixed income urban environment that is diverse being like a bad thing. The suburbs, every single aspect of American development has been tarnished by white supremacist attitudes that end up fucking over white people too. And they champion their own demise. And the exact same thing happens in Israel. Okay? That's exactly why Israelis took it to the fucking streets and were freaking out about their last secular institution, the Supreme Court in Israel, that's supposed to uphold the values that Israel is a European-style secular nation state. The only democracy in the Middle East. Come on, guys. How did they do that? Because they lied to you and said they had to do that. They lied to you and said they had to fucking get more and more increasingly right-wing. And those right-wing elements were interested in throwing away secularism and making Israel full-blown fascist that would even harm the liberal Zionists inside of Israel. The more you learn about the history of Palestinians, the more you realize how this concept is just riddled with lies from top to bottom. Trying to talk about Palestinian emancipation by hyper-focusing on one aspect of it, by saying, oh, Hamas, is the invention of ultra-Zionists. Like, they want this. Like, Bibists and the Likud party has been able to justify its increasingly more violent means of control by saying it's because we have to deal with Hamas. It's bullshit. Hamas is but a mere expression of how violent the conditions are. And throughout its history, throughout the history of Palestinian emancipation, Hamas was never a popular movement. It's only a popular movement now as a consequence of how violent this occupation has been.
A two-state solution, but Israel has killed the two-state solution with the settlements. It's a struggle now between right-wing ethno-nationalism and liberal ethno-nationalism, and I don't approve of either. An essential element of democracy is equal rights. Today I support one democratic state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea.
Whoa!
With equal...
Whoa, dude! Whoa! Avi! Chill, dog. You're being real anti-Semitic right now, dude. Hold up. Guys. I should have given a trigger warning. I didn't realize Israeli historian Avi Shleim was about to hit you with that fucking incredible anti-Semitic take. How dare he? That's crazy, bro. Everybody chill. I'm so sorry. I know a lot of you are probably really triggered right now because you heard this deeply anti-Semitic fucking take from Israeli historian Avi Shleim. So, why is this important? Why am I joking? Why am I joking about this? Why is this important? It's important because people who lap up ultra-Zionist propaganda live in an entirely separate world. Okay? An entirely separate world. Like, this is literally just like unimaginable. This conversation is like, oh, this is deep anti-Semitism. Okay? That's how ridiculous it is. Like, we can't even have a fucking normal conversation because the conversation is dominated by charlatans. I'm interested. I want to watch this.
I'd always heard
I want to watch this, but I want to also see like the specific
rights for all its citizens, regardless of religion and ethnicity.
It's really sad seeing Hassan like this, his heart filled with rage. Really? You think my heart is filled with hate? Really? Ragnar 9000? The only fucking take he's had in the chat is just that. That's the first thing he's ever said.
The experience that my family and I had of living together, coexisting with Arabs, give me reason for hope that what happened once in the Middle East can happen again. I used to support a two-state solution, but Israel has killed the two-state solution with the settlements. It's a...
No. This ain't me, boys. My heart is dark. My heart is so dark. It's filled to the brim with darkness. The darkness of believing that one day all of the Israelis and Palestinians will be able to live in a secular, democratic country with equal rights and equal representation. Oh, man. At a certain point, yes, Avi Shalem is an Iraqi Jew. He's also famous for uncovering a not forgotten, but like a deliberately hidden part of Israeli history. He's the one who talked about how Mossad was engaging in synagogue bombings in Iraq, specifically to get the Iraqi Jews to leave and feel unsafe, which was already happening. But they were, you know, tilting the scales a little bit. Anyway.
Well, Ben.
I want to watch this. Can someone send me the link of the Ali Velshi, the new Ali Velshi one?
Bennett drew criticism for a statement directed at an Israeli Arab member of parliament in which he asserted the Jewish right to settle the West Bank, saying to the Arab member, quote, "When you were still swinging from trees, we had a Jewish state here." End quote. With more, I am joined by Naftali Bennett himself, former Prime Minister of Israel, former Chief of Staff for incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In 2012, Bennett drew...
Oh, my God. Ali Welshi is back, motherfucker. He is back, dude. And in a big way. In a fucking big-ass way, dude. I want to see that. We love to see it. That better be a quote from 1842. Dog, what do you mean? This is why, like, guys, it is always difficult to have these conversations, but it's especially difficult to have these conversations if you are completely oblivious to it and you think that, like, even having this conversation is like it's been portrayed as it being inherently anti-Semitic. Okay? It's not. But that stops many kind-hearted liberals who don't know any better dead in their fucking tracks. They don't want to even talk about it. They're like, oh, God, I don't want to be anti-Semitic. It's offensive. It's gross. Anti-Semitism is a hate crime. That's why so many people are completely oblivious to the realities that at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, and sometimes it comes at 2:33. 1 month ago, this talk would all be considered anti-Semitic. I mean, I've been saying all of this shit for 10 fucking years now, but anyway,
shortage of horrific images and stories coming out of the Middle East since Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th. 1,400 people were killed in Israel that day, and almost 10,000 people in Gaza are believed to have been killed in Israel's subsequent invasion. But for a few trucks that get in from Egypt each day, Gaza's 2 million residents are largely cut off from fresh water, electricity, fuel, and other resources until, as Israel demands, Hamas releases the 241 hostages that it is believed to be holding captive. The brutality of the conflict has given rise to an intense global response, including accusations that both Israel and Hamas, the de facto governing body in the Gaza Strip, have committed war crimes. Contradictory as it may seem, there are rules that govern war. In particular, there's a set of rules known as international humanitarian law, sometimes called the law of armed conflict. It's a set of laws that apply when 2 or more states engaged in armed conflict, regardless of which party initiated combat. International humanitarian law aims to strike a balance between addressing a nation's need to defend itself and sparing civilians and non-combatants from the dangers of war. And it includes 5 basic principles. That actions carried out by the military must be necessary, that they must distinguish between civilians and legitimate targets, that military actions must be proportionate in order to avoid incidental harm, that they must...
It's kind of sad, but it's also kind of funny to think about this because it's like, when you realize it, it literally comes across as like Israel looked at this document and was like, oh, we're going to do everything it tells us not to do. Like, these are the basic guidelines of how Israel attacks. Okay? Unironically, it's very similar to the checklist of genocide, the 8 checks of genocide. if you look through it as I have before, the 8 checklists of you know, what is a genocide is quite literally what Israel is doing. Like, you're looking at it and you're like, well, it feels like this is the fuck. Like, is this a guideline to you know, how to deal with the Palestinians? Like, an answer to the Palestinian question? Like, the fuck?
Must avoid unnecessary human suffering, and that military actions must be honorable. The modern understanding of international humanitarian law began to take shape in the aftermath of the Holocaust. Shortly after the end of World War II, 21 top Nazi officials were arrested and indicted on a number of charges, including Hermann Goering, the infamous chief of the German Air Force and the last president of the Reichstag, who gave the order to carry out, quote, the final solution of the Jewish question, end quote. Beginning in November 1945 and lasting until October 1946, Goering and other Nazi officials were brought before the International Military Tribunal in Nuremberg, Germany, to stand trial for their crimes. In preparation for the prosecution, the International Law Commission of the United Nations drafted a set of guidelines that became known as the Nuremberg Principles, and it defined war crimes as, quote, violations of the laws or customs of war which include, but are not limited to, murder, ill treatment or deportation to slave labor or for any other purpose of a civilian population of or in occupied territory, murder or ill treatment of prisoners of war or of persons on the seas, killing of hostages, plunder of public or private property, wanton destruction of cities, towns, or villages, or devastation not justified by military necessity. The Nuremberg Principles were only the beginning. Over the following years, officials from around the world participated in a series of conferences with the goal of updating the Geneva Conventions.
Ben Shapiro's like, fuck the Nuremberg Principles.
Which are a set of laws that govern international relations in an effort to get the global community united on a set of principles. In 1949, a set of 4 conventions, which in this context means treaties, was unveiled. Those conventions form the core of international humanitarian law as we know it. They offer a framework for how countries are expected to treat civilians, non-combatants, the sick, the wounded, and prisoners of war during times of conflict.
Literally,
it's also meant to protect non-military personnel, like medical professionals and humanitarian workers who may be working on the ground in battle zones.
Another one for
All
Israel.
196 member states of the United Nations have ratified the 1949 version of the Geneva Conventions, including Israel. Amendments known as the additional protocols were added to the Geneva Conventions in 1977 in order to strengthen protections for civilians and victims of armed conflicts. But to this day, a number of countries, including the United States and Israel, have not adopted the additional protocols because of their objections to some of its provisions. Joining me now is Ona Hathaway, professor of international law at Yale Law School, director of the Yale Law School Center for Global Legal Challenges, and the executive editor of Just Security. Ona, I'd say it's good to see you, but it's never good to see you because every time you and I talk, it's about war crimes. So let's talk about this. In the immediate aftermath of the October 7th attacks, Israel and the United States repeatedly asserted the fact that Israel has the right to defend itself, and that's largely accepted. But what does international humanitarian law tell us about how militaries decide on what an appropriate response to an attack like October 7th is?
Yeah, you're exactly right, that there's been no question that Israel has a right to defend itself. And in fact, the actions committed by Hamas were themselves war crimes. The wanton destruction, the deaths and intentional targeting of civilians.
True. This is true. 100%.
Sexual assault, all of the rest. Those are all war crimes. But that doesn't mean that you can do anything in response, right? Self-defense does allow you to defend yourself, but there are some limits to what you can do. And international humanitarian law places some limits on the behavior of states that are responding rightfully to attacks on themselves. So as you mentioned, in particular, one of the key requirements is that states have to protect civilians. They have to distinguish between combatants and civilians and try to minimize the impact of the war on civilians.
Yeah, you don't get
the death toll in
chatter is correct. You do not get under no circumstances do you get a war crime hall pass, especially when you are personally the fucking militarized state. Like, your standards are higher than Hamas, okay? Straight up. But the fact that I don't even fucking say that. I literally am saying, like, can we hold you to the same standard of Hamas? Is met with, like, absolutely not. That is anti-Semitic as a counter. It blows my fucking mind. Ridiculous. Like, can we hold you to the same fucking international standards is a resounding no. And a cynical weaponization of anti-Semitism. A real hate crime. Gross. Grow up, Israel, and defenders of Israel, specifically defenders of Israeli violence. Grow up.
in Gaza may well reach 10,000 this weekend, mostly civilian children and women. When we're thinking about war crimes
and the elderly,
what's the distinction between the killing of non-combatants and that term that we've been hearing for decades, collateral damage? Some officials have used that in the past to refer to civilian casualties that occur as a result of military activity.
Right. So this term collateral damage is a term that's used when a military is properly and intentionally targeting a military object. So they're trying to target leadership of Hamas, or they're trying to target weapons cache of Hamas. That's permissible. They're allowed to do that. They're allowed to aim at that military object. But what if there are civilians in the way? You know, what if there are civilians above ground? These are in tunnel. A lot of these objects are located in tunnels. A lot of Hamas has located both their headquarters, and many of the forces are located in these tunnels. Many of their facilities and weapons caches are in tunnels, and there are civilians above ground, above these tunnels. And so when you're aiming at these military objects, you are permitted within limits to have some collateral damage. And collateral damage literally is actually killing of civilians and destruction of civilian objects. But the limitation is that it has to be proportional. So you have...
Guys, you want to know the funniest thing? You know how I've regularly talked about, like, I talk about class violence all the time, and like liberals are blind to that reality, but there's like the type of racial violence and ethnic violence that liberals cannot look away from and like cannot just hand wave away, because it's something that goes against the core of liberal beliefs. The same, I mean, this is the reason why if you discuss what Israel has done on real terms, then it becomes utterly unjustifiable to even liberals as well. However, one part of the problem that many do not recognize is that the reason why Israel cannot do anything against Palestinians without it being a war crime is because it is an apartheid state. Like, you're not, like, going to a foreign country and blowing it up is completely, utterly unjustifiable and is a war crime. But in this circumstance, especially, you are occupying them. You control their lives. That's why it's doubly a fucking war crime. There is no way to deal with Hamas that is violent. There's no violent means of dealing with Hamas without doing ethnic cleansing and ethnic displacement. This is a fact that Benjamin Netanyahu knows. That's why he deals with Hamas and negotiates only with Hamas and ritualistically destroys any kind of semblance of power that the Palestinian Authority could ever have for the crime of being stupid enough to fucking actually meet Israel on their own terms. Terms that are unimaginably cruel, terms that are ridiculous, terms that should be fucking thrown out if there was any honesty in this process.
Have to limit the destruction that you do in the process of your legitimate targeting of military objects, and you can't kill an outsized number of civilians, even though you may have legitimate military object to your targeting.
Oh, no, there's another term that we're hearing a lot about, and it's collective punishment. It's a term that's been used over the past few weeks. What does collective punishment mean, and how should we think about it in terms of the rules of war?
Well, the idea of collective punishment is that you're essentially
Israel split left and right, but currently with a far-right leader? No, man. The Israeli center and the Israeli right are literally... Let me explain something to you. Israeli politics, from our understanding, from like a clueless liberal's perspective, literally is like straight up fucking Nazis. I will say that 100%. Like Jewish Power Party, like open homophobes, like openly describing themselves as like fascist homophobes, like Smotrich. You know what I mean? And Itamar Ben-Gvir. Like these are guys that are like straight up fucking Nazis, okay? I will 100% say that. I don't give a fuck if you call that anti-Semitic. You can suck my fucking Muslim dick, okay? Suck my fucking dick. Some of those dudes are straight up fucking Nazis. Like, you can't. You can't do that. And then you have the Likud party, which is also insanely far right, okay? Insanely far right. But because it's a race to the fucking bottom, they come across as like simply far right and not like straight up Hitlerian. Even though, you know, it's close. They're teetering on the edge. Okay? That's anti-Semitic, bro. Look up the Jewish Power Party. Look up Itamar Ben-Gvir's background. Look up the Kahanas movement. And then come back to me and tell me what is the difference? What is the difference there? Okay? No, it's just straight Hitlerian. Okay? Straight motherfucking Hitlerian bullshit. Bro, it's so racist. Israel thought it was too racist. Like, what do you mean? These guys were considered terrorists by Israeli standards. Like, what are we talking about? I mean, yeah, exactly. You can ask Ofer Kasif what the Israeli left looks like. It's marginal. It's tiny. The problem is, of course it's going to be that way when you have delicately maintained a fascist ethno-state project for decades without any kind of pushback whatsoever from the Western world. Basically non-existent. ZP Livni is represented as a left opinion. Yeah. Is Israel more right-wing than the U.S. when it comes to fascism? Yes. Somehow. Anyway.
Punishing an entire population for the acts of some within that population. So the way in which it's being used here is the idea that, well, Hamas is embedded with...
Well, you're making it seem like PA even want to be involved in talks. They're cool as fuck with the current situation as long as they still deemed official authority and empower. No. What I'm talking about is Arafat and what he tried to do. I'm not a person that is like, I'm not one of those people that's like Arafat is a betrayer of the Palestinian people, even though he did. But I think that he was a cunning politician that truly thought that truly in his mind, I'm not his biggest fan. I'm just simply stating that I think he legitimately thought he saw the writing on the wall. He was an opportunist, but he saw the writing on the wall and he thought anything we can get will be better than the situation that I foresee it being. That's what it is. I don't think that the problem lied with Arafat. I think it was more so Israel that dominated that conversation. Now he was cornered too when all of his trusted brothers assassinated. He wasn't bad at the start. Yeah, no, he was very popular at the start. It's just that it was every conversation, every round of negotiations was used as a way to just like push the, to pass the buck down the line and to never really deal with the genuine problem, as Israel very openly and very deliberately expanded in the West Bank.
In the population, the civilian population within Gaza. And so that part of what Israel is doing is not just aiming specifically at those members of Hamas that are in Gaza, but by putting in place, for instance, the siege and significant targeting of infrastructure, cutting off water, cutting off food and the like, that they're engaging in what's sometimes termed collective punishment. Collective punishment is not permitted. So to the extent that what one is trying to do is actually intentionally impose harm on civilians, that's not permitted. You're not allowed to intentionally try to harm civilians in order to punish an entire population for the harm that some within it are doing. You can legitimately target those combatants. You can aim at legitimate military objects, but you can't harm an entire population just because there are some combatants located within it.
This is something you and I have talked about when we were dealing with Russia and Ukraine. It's a little bit different here because very few governments recognize Hamas as a legitimate government or an organization. Even the Palestinian Authority doesn't really recognize Hamas as the government of Gaza. How does that play into this discussion of violations of international humanitarian law, or in the case of possible war crimes prosecutions?
Yeah, you're right about that. That does make this quite complicated. In fact, generally the status of Gaza makes this all quite complicated. And among international lawyers, people are talking about, is this occupied territory? Is it occupied by Israel, even though Israel doesn't actually exercise effective control, but they contain the ability, the ingress and egress from Gaza, and therefore that might be enough to make it occupied territory. And
it is. No, she's right.
Damn, this guy's good.